Hello everyone, hope you're going well and welcome back to another webinar. So in this one today, we're going to be talking about retaining muscle during a deficit. Now there are a few things that people say, you're going to lose strength, you're going to lose muscle, all that kind of thing during a deficit phase. And this never really is the case. Now, if you're wondering why, there are so many ways we can make sure that we do retain muscle through these phases, and I'm going to run through some of them today. The first thing is always keeping an eye on your training performance. So, obviously you're all clients watching this, most of you, and if you are using your logbook, and you should be using your logbook correctly on the app, you should be tracking your workouts every week. Now, when you are in a dieting phase, this is probably, although, it is just as important when you are in a surplus, when we are in a deficit, it is just as important, if not more important. And this is purely so we can see the numbers and where they're trending, right? The idea will be we want to push for our numbers to hold for as long as possible, and there's no reason to say why you can't still progress when you're in a deficit. Now, there is some very big differences here, right? Like when you're in a mini cut phase, if it's like, anywhere between 8 to, even anywhere between 4 to, 12 weeks, let's say, most of the time you shouldn't really progress. Now, the only reason you should progress is because recovery isn't at its greatest, but there should be no reason why there is deterioration in muscle and you can't keep holding your numbers and progressing. Now, the only exception to this rule is as body weight does trend downwards, we do have less weight to move weight. So essentially, the concept of weight moving weight is super important. As you get lighter, we have less internal stability, so it's going to be harder to press heavier weight. A lot of the time, I know I personally do this with a lot of programming for most clients, depending on their needs. If they really like the exercises, I won't do it. But something like dumbbell pressing, shoulder pressing, and all that kind of thing, I really try and pull it out towards the back end of dieting phases, just because, again, internal stability's gone, you don't weigh as much, you can't press as heavy numbers, it becomes a little bit more unsafe as well. So what I like to do is I move over to things like Smith machines or just machine-based movements at that point, and then obviously when you transition out of that deficit phase, you can put in these movements again. Now, the next thing that I would always talk about when retaining muscle is making sure that protein intake stays relatively high. As, again, we know protein is a muscle building macro. And the idea there is keeping protein as high as possible, or at least relatively high, will keep that muscle there. The idea, it's still going to be a building block. It's going to feed the muscles. It's going to help retain the muscle as best as possible. And not only that, obviously, again, driving back to the performance side of things, another way to keep this going is keeping higher days of carbohydrates in through the routine. Now, when I say this, there is no means that it should be a high carb day throughout every week of a dieting phase. Now, but the thing is, we can really utilize these carbohydrates to help drive, again, that performance in the gym to help retain the muscle. By putting in these extra carbohydrates, obviously we're going to fill the muscles with a little bit more water, a little bit more glycogen, and therefore our retention of muscle is going to be better because we're able to perform better. So utilizing different macronutrients to help drive, again, performance to retain that muscle is another really, really good technique for this. Another driving factor can be using some intensifiers throughout training, and this is again to help with the retention of muscle, just because training performance will keep up with everything. Now, I could probably implore Michael to talk a little bit more on this, but the usage of rest pause sets, this is probably Michael's a little bit more field of expertise than mine, but there is research to say that rest pause set can stimulate muscle growth and muscle retention just as much as a normal working set. Now, a rest pause set would be something like you jump on a leg extension, you hit your 10 to 12 rep range, let's just say, you get to 10 reps, you hit failure, you rest 20 seconds, and then you get the most out of the working muscle and you go again for another set. It's like doing 2 sets in one, essentially. But like I said, this isn't my forte. I don't really use a lot of intensifiers with my clients. But when you are a little bit stuck on time, this is also another really good, type of movement or type of intensifier to utilize. And also it's really good for that retention of muscle, especially again, as training performance does dip, it gives you an opportunity to get a little bit more out of that working muscle. But nonetheless, that is about it. If you do have any questions in regards to any of that, please do not hesitate in reaching out. I would be more than happy to have a chat with you about any of this. But hopefully you did enjoy, and I'll chat to you on the next one.